You have had a very interesting and varied career. What can you tell us about your experience in London theatre as well as off-Broadway performance in New York?
London theatre came as quite a surprise to me. I never studied theatre. I never expected to be on the West End in London, to be honest with you. But somehow the story of my life led me there. And I'd like to tell you that story.
Yes, please.
So when I was 12 years old, I was in a Jewish day school in Johannesburg, South Africa. And we were on the first day of high school, 12 years old. And the teacher says, turn to the person next to you and tell one another a story. And there's a fellow sitting next to me, his name's Paul, and he tells me a story. And then he says to me, Murray, tell me your story. And I say, oh, I don't have a story. Oh, go on, Murray, everyone has a story. No, really, I just don't have one. And my face went blood red. I blushed all the way from my neck up to the top of my head. Anyhow, Paul was not one of the boys who called me names during the break time. He wasn't one of the people who called me Murray, you sissy, you fag, you know, you pansy, all those kinds of things. He never said those things. But one day, we were in the second to last year of high school, which we in South Africa called Form 4. And the teacher can't control the class. So she herds us out of the classroom, and she says in Afrikaans, because that was the class we were in, Afrikaans, Seuns links, meisies rechts, which means boys on the left and girls on the right. And Paul points to me and says, and Murray in the middle. And once again, my face went red and the entire class laughed. He tried to say hello to me when we went to university, because all of a sudden I was smoking cigarettes. If you can believe it, I had long blonde hair. I was surrounded by people. And he said to me, hi, and I turned my head the other way. And I never saw him again. I got to New York in 1990. And I had said goodbye to everyone in South Africa. I'm leaving clinical psychology behind. I'm coming to be a playwright in New York City. And I arrive here in the middle of an AIDS epidemic. I'm living on Christopher Street, and people, young men my age, are walking down the street with these dark purple marks on their faces, being pushed in wheelchairs, dying. Anyway, I hand my play to a friend of mine who had a theater. And she said to me, you need a director to direct your play. So I meet this guy who she introduces me to. He's French-Canadian, a man by the name of Simon Fortin. And he says, oh, I'd like to do your play. I think it would be a good play to do. And by the way, Murray, do you by any chance know my boyfriend? And I say, well, who would that be? And he says, Paul Brody. Same guy.
Oh my goodness.
So here we are, 10,000 miles away from home, 20 years later. So the play opens and Paul comes over to me. My heart is pounding. He says to me, Murray, great play. I say to him, Paul, what an amazing coincidence that we should meet like this. And he says to me, listen, there's something that's been bothering me for many, many years now. Do you remember that thing I said to you outside the classroom? And I said, yes, I do remember. And he said to me, I'm so sorry. I have felt bad about that for all these years. So after he apologized, he and I started talking on the phone every single day. Now, this was the time when South Africa was gearing up for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and everybody was telling their story in South Africa. And Paul and I started telling stories to one another. All the things that had happened to us, you know, since high school, which we hadn't connected about. And of course, he was gay, I was gay. And so we had so much to talk about. And 6 weeks later, we were riding down on the train to Brooklyn, and Paul said to me, Murray, I'm HIV positive. And my jaw just dropped, because, you know, people were dying at that time of HIV, of AIDS. This is the story that Paul and I tell in this performance called Two Men Talking. Now, Paul is still alive. And so we took the very same story that I have just told you, and we started telling it at conferences, and we told it at a big narrative therapy conference in Adelaide, Australia. And people came up to us, this was in 2000, people came up to us and said, you've got to put this in the theatre. And you know, before you know it, we were off to the Young Vics Theatre in London, workshopping Two Men Talking with a British theatre director. Then we got a British Arts Council grant to take Two Men Talking across England. We were at the Edinburgh Theatre, a French theatre festival. And then we went to Trafalgar Studios in London. And then, of course, we had our off-Broadway run in New York at the Barrow Street Theatre. So, a strange,
Wow.
twisty journey. And who knew it was going to happen?